we be doing right now? Because I feel like there's like a massive strategy that may be 400 years in the making, and they have the playbook, they have the cheat sheets that they hand out to everyone, they have the talking points, keep them real simple, and then they just ram them down our throats. It's like, and then you end up on your heels defending nonsense as opposed to trudging forward into, rights and success and all. So we're constantly on our
Mhm.
heels, which is never a good place to be when you're in battle, and we're in battle.
Yeah. So my first answer is that's why I try to spend most of my time on the attack, right? Like I try to not be reactive and not be defensive, and instead keep pushing the rock. If you are, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people have noticed that I am quite critical of Democrats, right? I'm critical of Democrats because those are the people that I can work with, right? those are those are the people who are going to listen to me, right? And so I find some value in pushing them as hard as I can, as opposed to constantly defending myself from whatever dumbass thing Chris Rufo said last week. Because who can't? Doesn't matter. You're not
Right.
listening to me, and his people aren't listening to me. So like I don't have to actually pay that any mind. So like step one to answer your question: attack, not defense. Push your allies, don't worry about the knuckleheads is just a perspective that I take. But the other answer to your question is that we can't be the knuckleheads. Like we can't get tripped up on issues that are not as important, on issues that are designed to wedge us and basically exhaust us and make us stay home. Because the Republican plan is not. I mean, as much as Trump and his people might talk about, oh, Trump is up to 21% of black voters. I mean, he's not. Trump is going to get the same 12 to 18% of black voters that every Republican has gotten since 1964, because there are always 12 to 18% of black people who are going to vote for Republican because they like low taxes too, right? Clarence Thomas
Mm,
was going to vote for Republican. If Clarence Thomas could get a tax break on his mother's house, which he did because Harlan Crow paid for it, that wasn't always going to be enough for Clarence Thomas to vote Republican, right?
Clarence Thomas is he's in a different category, and he's Republican, not for the same reasons that my dad, for example, was a Republican, and a Reagan one at that, right?
Oh God,
The Republicans of yesteryear, even before Reagan, aren't the Republicans today. Today's Republicans are racist white nationalists. Period. That's the party of white nationalism. So it's a little bit different. And I also disagree with you that today, while yes, typically 18 to 20% of black people would vote Republican, and they did vote for Trump, maybe the first time and the second time, there's something different going on this time. And I don't know if you are feeling that in your research, but I feel like there's a larger groundswell, or is it media propaganda? But I'm listening to people saying that they won't vote, which is
well that's
a bigger disturbance to me than the 18 to 20% of people who say they're going to vote for Trump.
that's exactly where I'm going, Karen. I do not think that Trump is going to get more than the usual 18 to 20% of black voters that Republicans have always gotten for my entire life. He's not going to get more than that. What I am worried about, and what Republicans are actively trying to do, is to convince black people to stay home and not vote at all. And that is what's going to hurt Biden's reelection chances way more than the black people who actually vote for Trump. It's the black people who don't bother to vote at all. Because of how the Democratic Party works, and because of how, and I always try to emphasize this, the problem with Trump is not, and never has been, and never will be, voters of color. The problem is always that 55 to 60% of white people are going to vote for this orange racist criminal regardless. And to stop that 60% of white people, people of color need to have overwhelming turnout, overwhelming turnout in order to stop them. And that's where Trump and the Republicans are attacking. They're trying to depress our turnout. They're trying to exhaust our turnout. And that, Karen, yeah, I hear the exhaustion. I hear the depression. I hear black people who I know are voters, who I know have voted in the past, just finding it difficult to find that will to do it
Mm-hmm.
again.
Yeah.
And the argument, oh, Trump is so bad, because
It's
we've
not
already lived
resonating.
through it, right? It's just
Right.
not hitting. It's not hitting the
Yeah.
way the Democrats think it should hit, right? Because maybe it's because we've already lived through it once. Maybe it's because again, media has normalized this man beyond all recognition. Young people, people who first time voters, people who are 18 to 20 years old, they've never lived as an adult without Trump kind of being around and being a thing and being a force in politics. So his craziness doesn't strike them as abnormal anymore, right? That's the kind of depression. That's the thing that I am worried about very much as we
I
head into to November.
I'm too. And
And
what's
so I
really
try to tell
wild.
people, if you
Yeah,
can't, if you're not motivated to vote for Biden for whatever reason, it's almost like I'm not even trying to get people excited about Biden anymore. Not that there, and
same.
look, if you are excited about Biden, great. I've already got your vote. So for the people who aren't excited about Biden, I'm not trying to kind of piss in their ear and tell them it's raining, right? Like they've made their decision on that. I'm trying to get them excited about all of these other things that are also on the ballot in November that have almost nothing to do with Joe Biden that we should still care about, whether
Okay,
it's voting rights. Go ahead.
let's go down. Let's go down the list. Let's just check them off because and then let's spend some time talking about the inevitable because I you got 80 plus indictments. He's on trial right now. I want to talk a little bit about that. They're having a hard time finding a jury in New York. It's wild. It's wild. Found responsible in a sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll, having to pay all that money. Found also liable of expanding or lying about his wealth and lying about the amount of his property, the value of his property. Found responsible for that and is leading in every poll. Just about, even though polls are for strippers. I'm not a big poll person, but I know what I'm feeling, Ellie, and I don't like it. I feel like we're going to end up in a really bad place, and there's absolutely at this point, I feel like with several months left to November, very little we can do about it, and anything else is going to push people into their corners. So let's talk about what is on the ballot if we can ignore Joe Biden.
Yeah. So obviously, from my perspective, abortion is on the ballot, and not just abortion in terms of whether or not women have rights to their own bodies. We're also talking about contraception because the same legal arguments that they're using to attack abortion rights or successfully use to attack abortion rights are the same arguments that they are now explicitly making about contraception. Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee recently, got on the tubes to talk about her problems with contraception. Like that's the thing that's coming next, right? So even if you're a person who is squeamish about abortion, I disagree with you. But even if you're a person who's squeamish about abortion, surely you can agree that the birth control pill is like a good scientific thing that people should have access to if they want, right? Like surely you're not that great, right? So that's on the ballot this fall, and people were just like, "Oh, well, the Democrats won't do anything differently." Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Right? There is a gulf of difference between what the Democrats will do, or more importantly, won't do to take away these rights, than what the Republicans will do take away these rights. Right. So that's number one. That I think does resonate with lots of people. Obviously, I keep talking about the Supreme Court because, as we were just talking about this DeRay case, give me an issue that you have, and I will tell you how nothing happens as long as Republicans control the Supreme Court, right? Democrats are the only ones who are appointing justices that have any, I think, adherence to not just the rule of law, but the rule of fairness, just fundamental basic fairness, and truthfulness in their opinions. Only Democrat judges at this point do that. And it's not just the judges that Biden appoints to the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, clearly a rock star on the Supreme Court already. Biden has also been the most successful president at appointing diverse judges throughout the judicial system, right? So your trial court judge, your lower court judges are all better because of Biden. He's been better at this than Barack Obama or anybody else prior to him in terms of diversity, not just diversity in terms of race and ethnicity, but diversity in terms of experience. So, I'm a black guy who went to Harvard, and that means that for most of this country's history, I would be the only kind of black person they would allow within 5 feet of a road, right? But not Biden.
Mm.
But not Biden. Biden goes and gets brothers and sisters who didn't go to the special 8 schools, who have more practical experience than me, who have, been out there in the trenches on the streets working for these issues, and he elevates them to be in charge of the gavel. And that is, I think, one of his most important success stories in his administration. So if you care at all about the kinds of people who are making these decisions for life, they're on the ballot this November. And the last thing that I always close with is, I don't know what your student loans look like. Mine were terrible. And while mine are still terrible because I'm too old, I'm too old, and I've aged out and kind of incomed out of some of the relief packages. I promise you, my kids' loans will not be as crushing as mine because of Biden's policies. Biden is going to get student loan relief through come hell or high water. And if you're, again, a young person who was voting for the first time, like, please consider that, because that, I think, is, to me, that is a true kitchen table issue
Right.
that's going to improve your life. That is going to
Right.
be that, when I got out of law school, pretty much my only option was to work for a Wall Street firm, because the Wall Street firms, representing Exxon and Enron, they were the only ones that were going to pay me enough money, pay back my debts. People graduating from law school under Joe Biden and under these new policies maybe won't have to make those same terrible decisions. And
And
that
if
is,
you if, and if you want to say Trump would do the same thing, no, he put Supreme Court justices that struck down the President Biden's initial relief for student loans. They refused for him to allow him to do that. So you
Biden put
already know,
Trump's education secretary, right, was Betsy DeVos.
yo.
Was Betsy freaking DeVos. No, Trump would not do the same thing. No, Trump would do the opposite thing. And we know that from his first administration. So, yeah, so I think all of those things are on the ballot. And I try to get people excited about all of those things: environmental issues, gun rights issues. There's a huge Supreme Court case that will be decided in June about bump stocks, and whether bump stocks, which were banned, whether or not the Supreme Court can bring them back. That's the ammo, that's the attachment to a gun that basically turns a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. It's been used by the Las
Yes.
Vegas shooter to injure hundreds of people. Huge case about that. There's a huge case about whether or not abusive boyfriends can get their guns back, because Trump judges have tried to reinstate the right of domestic abusers to have to keep their guns, which, and I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to bleeds at leads here. That policy leads to dead women. It is a point and click proposition here. We know for a fact that women are most likely to be killed by an intimate or former intimate partner. We know that they are 3 times more likely to be killed by a former intimate or intimate partner when that partner has a gun. And so now you're telling me that we have a group of people who have already shown violence against their wives and girlfriends, and we're going to give them their guns back?
Yes.
Are you like, that's Trump?
No, I mean, but Elie, you're not. I feel your outrage because you are a feminist who loves women. You're a great dad. But it feels like this country is trying to really turn back the hands of time. They want women in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant, no rights, no ability to be able to say no. Back to the time when you couldn't be raped if you were in a relationship. Like, this is where we are right now. And I feel like a lot of you saying that is on the ballot will make people show up to vote for that, not against it. Elie, 53% of white women and then 54% of white women doubled down and voted for against all of that. We knew that Roe v. Wade was on the ballot. We knew those justices were lying when they were being confirmed. We knew they were lying. And they voted anyway. So, there's this Patty Hearst thing happening in homes throughout the country. And I don't know if we can fight it because it is so up close.
My
It is
wife
so
is
up close.
my wife is from Zimbabwe, and we met in college, and she likes to say, before I came to this country, I knew America hated black people. I had no idea how much it hated women. Right? Like this country has some deep hostility towards women and towards women's rights and towards women's freedom and towards women's empowerment.
But it's
And
power, though. It's
and
power because
and that
because an empowered woman can make a choice, and this is really what's at the crux of this. 866-801-8255. It's at the crux of this are a lot of men that have been rejected, and they feel bad, and they don't want to be rejected. They don't want the possibility of rejection. Even Trump is the model. He is the poster boy for that. Grab him by the pussy. I'm going to even Stormy Daniels, who was an adult film star, said she was violated, but she didn't say no.
right.
He just took it. He just took it. And how many Epstein, island people, dwellers, from Microsoft head to, people to Prince Andrew, people on that island. Why? Because they were with women who were too vulnerable, right, to have any power. And that dominance, that rape culture that we're in, because it's rape culture, it's power, it's not sex, it's power. That's the drug. That's the drug we're going to try to get people off. We were talking about gambling earlier with the NBA player, and a brother called up and said he was a crackhead, and it was similar to being a gambling addict. Like this is the addiction to power and lording over people. It is foundational. This is
It,
America's foundation.
I mean, you're talking a lot about incel culture, and so my hobby. So I do this for a living. My hobby, I play a lot of video games, right? And so video games are kind of a hotbed of incel culture. Certain games and certain kind of forums about those games, discussions around those games are kind of a hotbed of incel culture. And so I see I see more of it than I want to. Let's put it like that. And it's hard for me to talk about because like I strain everything as one does through the lens of their own experience. And I talk about being rejected. Man, I got some rejection story. I got like high school that was not a smooth ride for me. As one can imagine, I wasn't particularly athletic. I wasn't particularly coordinated. Um, um, I, I dealt with that rejection, by like developing a personality, right? Like if
Yes.
I can't dance their pants off, I'm gonna joke them off. I'm gonna do something. I just find something that you could bring to the table, and I went and I found that something that I could bring to the table to deal with that rejection. People who don't have that something, or people who can't find that something, or people who have been told that they can't find that something, are really, really sad, and they're really, really sad in a culture that basically treats getting the girl as the reward at the end of the journey, right? That
No,
that
and this
treat
goes beyond. How many virgins are promised in certain cultures? If
right like
like this is a sickness, right? That goes beyond America culture. But to your point, you worked on yourself. You found some qualities about yourself that you can magnify, and they work because by and large we're just people having an experience. But what we have today are lazy, bitter people who don't want to read. They don't want to work on themselves. They want to blame everybody for why they aren't where they feel they need to be. And they have a tribe now, and they have a tribe leader. It's crazy to me.
and so I just
It's
want to, so
crazy.
yeah, so I worked on myself. But there's also just like it only takes one. Like the top for every pot. Like you only have to be successful once, and then you're good. But I always think about this in the context of raising two boys in this culture, right? I have two beautiful black sons, and as they get older, my oldest one's going to start middle school next year. You can see that culture, you called it rape culture. You can see that kind of trying to get into them, trying to kind of weigh on them. And my wife and I, we do everything we can, not just to protect the children from that, because you can't, protecting them is actually kind of almost the wrong thought process, to prepare the children for that, right? To show the children how they can fight through that, how they can overcome that, how they can reject and ignore that, what rejecting and ignoring that actually means, like what consent actually means and how to achieve it, right? Like all of these things. So when they play video games and the video game treats the girl as the prize at the end of the
Yeah.
level, I'm playing the game with them. I'm like, now this is wrong, son. I'm like, this is not this is not how you,
Right.
pitch
How
it.
do you?
Princess Peach didn't ask you for a goddamn thing like that. Those kinds of lessons
I
were
mean,
kind
but
of
it
using
even
every
even
possible moment to try to push back against that culture.
I play like a Scrabble game and a solitaire game, and then they have the little video pop-ups. And there's one where the woman, she's hairy, and there's like an option for razors, like a makeover. And then at the end, when if you've made her over properly, she gets the guy. And then there's one where the guy chooses a beautiful woman over his wife and daughter, and they're out in the cold. And then you have to, pull different things to give her, coal for the pot, and but she's thrown away by him. And I was like, what the hell? Who's making these games? And it's those guys,
Right?
right?
And this
Because
is
they're
where they
living out their
recruit.
fantasies.
This is where they recruit, right? So you can play some of these games and you can spend 90% of your time with entirely normal people, happy, well-adjusted people, funny people. You can meet me in one of these games, right? Like totally normal, good experience. But those 5 to 10%, that small minority of people who are not good people, that's who the Trumpers are looking for. And they find them in sometimes in these games and recruit them from these games, recruit them from these forums. It's people are, I think the official scholarly term is radicalized, but like they use, whether it's a game, whether it's TikTok, whether it's some other social media, they find the people who are already struggling and give them an enemy to blame their struggles on, right? And I think that is the culture that we're fighting against, because these people always existed. There were always people who were struggling, but as you put it exactly right, Karen, they didn't have a tribe. They didn't have they didn't have the outside connection, and they weren't able to metastasize that feeling of failure, frankly, of
Right.
of
Right.
of, of, of unfulfilled ambition into a political candidate. And that's what Trump has tapped into. And that's why it's so difficult to defeat him. Because it's not just about defeating him, it's almost like it's about defeating the feeling among white men that they haven't gotten what was promised to them. And that's a really difficult
Yes.
feeling to defeat.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe I would be, I don't know, if I used to own land and people, maybe I would feel, right?
yeah, but as they always say, I didn't. My family came through Ellis Island. So do you want to own land and people? Is this what the fight is for? If you didn't, I didn't have any. My people didn't have any enslaved. We didn't enslave anybody. Okay, so is the desire to do that? Is
Right?
that
Do you
what
feel,
you're really fighting for? To have the thing? I
are,
mean, it's
are,
a
are you
wild.
sad
It's
that you didn't get to do that? Because it sounds like you're sad, right?
yes,
It
yes.
sounds like you
Let's.
feel like you missed your opportunity to enslave people.
Well, I mean, the history rhymes, so it could come back. I think people think it can never go back to the way it was, but it
Oh,
absolutely
this
can
is the
get
biggest.
worse.
This is one of the biggest. And now I can go back on the attack with Democrats. This is one of our biggest problems. My uncle is a philosophy professor at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and he's Haitian, and he kind of specializes in Caribbean political thought and theory. And one of the things he always says about our country, as opposed to the islands, is that everybody in the islands, they know how to protect their democracies better than us because they know what happens when they lose it, right? Haiti right now knows exactly
Yes.
what happens when you lose some democracy, right? It goes from bad to worse real quick, right? Americans, we've never lost it. And so we act like we can't lose it. And we absolutely can and are, in fact, in the process of losing it. And so we need to fight for it with both hands, man. We need to fight for it in the trenches because there are people trying to take it away from us. I don't know how much reporting you've done on the Project 2025, the conservative,
Yeah.
plan to take over America. But when you read that 900-page document, that's some scary stuff. These people have thought it through. They've thought through how you got to understand Trump's first administration was like a test run. right? It was where they kind of were able to work out the kinks in authoritarianism. If he comes back for a second term, if people
Child.
give him a second chance, there are going to be a lot of kinks worked out. And that means there
Already.
are going to be a
Right.
lot more people rolled over.
I want you to say yeah.